You know that feeling, right? When you're trapped in some hot, crowded room, and this one tiny little repetitive thing starts to drive you absolutely crazy? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. It's a story about heat, social status, and a, let's say, very annoying head of hair, all wrapped up in this really fascinating short poem. Okay, so let's kick things off with a bit of a puzzle. This line right here, it's pretty much the climax of our whole story, but I'm guessing it makes absolutely no sense to you right now. Forfex? What in the world is a forfex? Just hang on to that word. Tuck it away in the back of your mind, because figuring out what it means, well, that's the key to this whole thing. All right, to really get what's going on, you have to picture the scene. We're talking about a very formal evening concert at, one of the most traditional universities on the planet, Cambridge. So, the first thing you need to know is that there's this built-in tension right from the start. See, it's called a May concert, but it's actually a super warm, sweltering evening in June. The college hall is packed. I mean, absolutely to the brim. The air is thick, the space is tight, and the whole vibe is just intensely formal and stuffy. And this is where we get two different views of the same scene. On one side, you have the straight-up facts from the notes. The hall is packed to capacity, and seating is all about teaching seniority. But then the poem comes in and gives you the feel of the place. It talks about ancient timbers and stones, and this hierarchy of pseudo-intellectual rank. So one is telling us what's happening, and the other is telling us what it feels like to be there. Big difference. Let's flesh this out a bit more, shall we? Imagine this. Portraits of all these old past masters are just staring down at you from the walls, this constant heavy reminder of tradition. The musicians and singers are all students, sure, but the audience is arranged in this super rigid academic pecking order. You can just feel that stiff, formal energy, can't you? It's almost suffocating. But right into the middle of this perfectly controlled, super formal environment, something disruptive is about to enter the picture. Just a tiny, tiny little bit of chaos that's about to become the source of all the drama. So our protagonist, just a guest at this concert, is kind of wedged uncomfortably in their seat. And in this hot, cramped space, their entire focus, their entire world, suddenly gets hijacked by one single, maddeningly repetitive little thing. And the poem just nails this feeling. Someone sitting in the row ahead has this long mane of hair, and they just keep flicking it back, constantly. Oh, you know that feeling, right? When a tiny little annoyance just drills its way into your brain and becomes the only thing you can think about? Okay, but this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. Because instead of just sitting there and fuming, our guest's very educated mind takes this incredible leap, all the way back to 18th century literature. So yeah, this isn't just some random irritation. For this specific person in this very academic setting, that flicking hair triggers a very, very specific memory. He's reminded of a famous satirical poem by a guy named Alexander Pope. And that poem? It's called The Rape of the Lock. It's a total classic. It's what you'd call a mock epic, which is a fancy way of saying it takes a tiny, silly social mistake, in this case, a nobleman snipping a lock of hair from a lady's head, and treats it like it's this huge, epic, world-ending event. It causes this massive feud between their families. The central crime is literally just cutting a piece of hair. So you can see the mental journey happening, right? Step 1, he gets annoyed by the hair. Step 2, that annoyance makes him remember Pope's poem about cutting hair. And then step 3, his mind just spirals into this full-blown fantasy, where the concert hall becomes the stage for this epic imaginary showdown. And this brings us right to the peak of our guest's internal drama, that moment where his raw irritation and his wild imagination just completely collide. And here we go. It's time to solve that mystery from the beginning. Remember forfex? Well, a forfex is simply the Latin word for a pair of scissors. That's it. It's the specific, kind of dramatic word that Alexander Pope himself used in his poem to describe the weapon that snipped that famous lock of hair. And that is the thought that just completely takes over his mind as he's staring at the back of her head, watching that hair flick back again and again. He can't help but think, what if I had a forfex right now? What if I could just reach out and snip? The internal drama has officially hit its breaking point. But right at that moment, just as this internal fantasy is reaching a fever pitch, reality decides to step in. A simple, everyday social custom is about to break the spell. And then, the interval. The music stops, people start to get up and stretch, and just like that, his obsessive focus is broken.
The source notes are really clear on this. That break was the crucial thing that stopped this whole fantasy from going any further.
You can pretty much map out his whole emotional roller coaster for the evening. He starts out hot, crowded, and just deeply irritated, but then the interval hits, and with it comes some cooler air, a little food and drink, and his focus just completely shifts. By the time the concert is over, the annoyance is totally forgotten. All that's left is this feeling of satisfaction with the music. The internal ordeal is finally over. And the poem itself captures this change so perfectly. Just the simple act of taking a pause, going for a little stroll, and having something to eat and drink, what it calls a little ingestion, that's all it took to calm his frayed nerves and release all that tension he was bottling up. See, nothing in the bigger world actually changed, just his immediate situation. That simple little break for the interval was enough to completely shut down the whole internal conflict. The flicking hair is a distant memory, and all that's left is the satisfying hitting of palms for a performance well done.
So, when you think about it, this whole epic battle, this dramatic fantasy with the scissors and the lock of hair, it all happened entirely inside one person's head, and it was all kicked off by one tiny little annoyance. It kind of leaves you with a question, doesn't it? How many of our own biggest, most epic dramas are playing out on a stage that absolutely no one else can even see?